afternoon. I'm JP, so I just joined the club in April's Fool, so not too long ago. And I think very happy. I had dinner here a couple of times. Really like the club. I live in Wilmette. And so I wanted to share with you, things that we do. That's what's happening in AI and robotics. So here it is. The title is The History of the Robots, History of AI. And I want to talk about today. And since it's the History Club, I call it the History of Tomorrow. And so we were looking at the slides with Jay. We decided that I have too many slides. I have 102 slides. So what we're going to do is we're going to, pardon us, we're going to skip the AI, the history of AI, and then we'll have a different meeting, maybe next month or 2 months from here. We're going to cover and do justice to AI, if that's okay with you. So those are kind of talks that I gave at the Michigan Shows Club, which is next. I live just 1 block away from in Wilmette. And so when ChatGPT came out, people asked me, JP, what the heck is the ChatGPT business? And so I gave a talk on ChatGPT, and every year I give a talk at the Michigan Shows. So what we'll do today, we'll talk about the humanoid robot and the history of the robots. We're going to skip the history of AI, and then look at the history of tomorrow. I won't be too long there. And then I want to share with you some thoughts about things, big questions like consciousness, right? And the need to work, that kind of stuff, right? We're going to cover that. So I have 2 questions for you. Number 1, anyone, you can just raise your hand and say, what will you have the robot do for you? Housekeeping. Fold the laundry, clean up. What else? Huh? Okay. Run some errands for you, go to the restaurant store. Cooking. Okay. What else? Investing. Okay. You can ask the robot to invest too, right? Yeah. Yeah, give them the money and they'll invest for you. Cool. Any other ideas? Yes? Cut the grass. Wonderful. Companionship, yeah. Okay. Self-driving car? Yeah. Yeah.
Putting things in their places.
Okay, that's a difficult task. Yes. Repair work, okay. Okay. The bathroom's clogged, right?
Lift family members in and out of bed.
Oh, okay. Very good. So I have another question for you. So what will you be doing while the robot is busy doing your chores? What do you do? Okay. Okay. Reading a book. Pickle. Cool. Thank you very much. So let's start with the history of robots. I mean, the first thing, God created humans in his image, right? And attributed to Moses. And then what happened in this century, man created robot in his image, right? So that's the story of the humanoid robot. So robots have fascinated us, right? And time immemorial. And it is possible that the act of building robots is very profound in us, right? To really understand what's going on, we go ahead and build robots. So let's look quickly at the history of robots. So I'll go through those, and we'll start with, we're in China, right? 10th century. And we have this genius by the name of Yanxi. This is mythology, right? This guy by the name of Yanxi presented a humanoid robot to King Mu under the Zhou dynasty. And the robot is very lifelike, and in the court, then the robot's starting to flirt with the courtesans. And the king got very upset and was menacing to kill Yanxi, right? What the heck did you do here? So Yanxi ran and basically opened up the robot and showed, oh, look at these strings and the cogs and all that stuff, and this is how it works. And then the king was very happy, and Yanchi was not killed. So that little story tells you about how we can take the story of the robot, right? So immediately you can see flirting, you can see, things that happen between people. So then let's go to the second one I want to talk is Talos, right? This is even if it looks golden, actually it's bronze, right? It's a bronze sentinel of Crete, and basically there to protect the island of Crete, right? This is Jason and the Argonauts, and this thing could hurl, rocks. It could do all kinds of stuff to protect Crete. And the way it worked, it has a vein that runs from the back of the head to the heel, and it was animated by what they call the ichor, ICHOR. It's like the blood. And then he got trapped, and basically, Midias, the lady, the sorceress, basically unplugged the nail, and the ichor got out, and he died, right? So interesting that the robot that we have is not permanent, right? So there's a way we can trick the robot and kill the robot, kind of back of your head. Just remember that, right? And just for fun, I wanted to know, how fast the robot really moved. And the story goes that it goes 3 times around Crete in just one day, right, to protect the island. And I just checked the perimeter of Crete is 640 miles, and it does that 3 times a day. So we're looking at almost like 2,000 miles in, 24 hours? So that would be something like 640 miles an hour. So that's faster than the plane, right? And this guy was walking. So just tell you how interesting the story is. And then we'll go from before Common Era to the Common Era. We'll go to the 11th, 12th century. And this is, we go in the Jewish folklore. And we have this gentleman, yes, Golem, that is here to protect the Jews, right? And what's interesting about it, then, if you look at the Kabbalah, for instance, where the meaning of the words is very heavy, has a lot of impact of what's happened. So the word, if you put the word emet on the forehead, it means the truth, right? And the way you kill it is by removing the E, so it becomes met, which is death. So once again, it's kind of interesting to see that this story has to do with the killing of the robot, just like we were talking about in the previous 2 stories, right? Makes you think a little bit. Sounds good? Okay, so now we'll move to 1206, Al-Jazari. Anyone heard of Al-Jazari? Al-Jazari, he was an absolute genius, and he invented all kinds of stuff. He's called the father of robotics. And way before intellectual property was there, he published his book called the Book of Knowledge of the Ingenious Mechanical Devices, where he laid out how to build those contraptions. And he's most famous for his elephant clock. So this thing could tell time, right? And the way it works is that there's a big tank in the belly of the elephant. And it has a system of a sink, a bowl with a hole. And over time, it goes down. And then all of a sudden, it comes down very fast. And with some strings, you got the minutes, the hours that are exposed at the top. And then you have the scribe here that would move the minute, right? And the mahout as well would kind of make the show more interesting. And this is how this thing tells time. Well, this is very impressive, right? With it's a water clock. And kind of a quick note is that we have something called the temporal hour. So the temporal hour has to do with the fact that you look from sunrise to sunset, and you divide this by 12. And the size of the hour during the day is not the same as the size of the hour during the night. And this thing could actually do that, right? That's called the temporal hour. And this is really very, very impressive, because you would expect it to be what we call equinoctial, which you take the whole thing, you divide by 24, but that wasn't the case. So that the system is even more complicated. The 2 other tanks as well to help do that kind of stuff. So this guy was real genius. And so it's really amazing. If you have the time, I have the address of a YouTube video that really explains how it works. It's a very nice video. Explains to you how the elephant clock works. Now let's go to Da Vinci. So Da Vinci, what he did among so many things that he did, he built a humanoid robotic knight, right? And this thing could lift and lower the Bayser. It could move its hands and could do lots of things with pulleys and gears and all that stuff, right? And he was working for Ludovico Sforza, the Duke of Milan, who at the time decided to make Italy great, right? And so this is, people try to reconstruct it, and it looks like it works. It's like pretty accurate. Any question? You guys are good? Yeah? So let's go, we'll jump to Japan. In the Edo era, Edo is the old name for Tokyo, right? And so there's something called karakuri, and that's the art of the puppets, the automata, right? And the three big categories of them. Those yashiki is the indoor dolls reserved for the upper crust of society because very expensive, right? And then this gets to be known because it would go to festivals and all that stuff. So it gave rise to, like the dachi, and then the butai would be things like for festivals that you can see. I have a picture for you here. And this gentleman here, Tanaka Hisashige, looks like he was one of the most prominent guys there. And he's also called the Thomas Edison of Japan. So here are the kind of doors automata that we're looking at, right? The three big categories. Yes, ma'am?
Are they all lined up? Is that how it works?
Yeah, they have a system of pulleys and stuff, yeah, automata. And there's one which is very funny, which is, the Japan, like the arrow pulling the arrow. And it does shoot the arrow, kind of interesting. So then we'll go to the 17th century with Christian Huygens. The British had the Science Academy, and the French people want to compete and show that they couldn't be left behind. So at the time, they're looking for some smart guy to head up the French Academy of Science. And they found this guy, Christian Huygens. And if you remember your high school physics, you probably studied light and optics, and also he's very famous. And so he basically came up with the mechanical army for Louis XIV, right? And there's no trace today of that. So what you see here is I asked ChatGPT if it could do a rendering, and I think it's pretty inaccurate, by the way, a rendering of what Huygens did, right? So yeah, he did that for the Louis XIV, commissioned by Colbert. Colbert was a big guy, as you know, of the king's son. And so this automaton featured multiple figures that could move in synchronicity, right? And apparently very, very impressive. And then we'll go to Jacques de Vaucanson, French inventor. And this guy was a very interesting guy. So he's famous for, probably the most famous one is the digesting duck. So the duck was more than the automata, than the karakuri of Japan. This thing actually digested food. So the duck sits on a table like this. There's lots of things going on. And there's a museum, I forgot the name, but they have the different stages of when it takes in the food digests it, and then at the end you have poop that comes out. and then that's it. If you read up on that, it's really, really impressive, right? And so he's got his digesting duck, which is the magnum opus of Jacques de Vaucanson. And then he's got other things as well. So he's got the flute player, apparently could play 20 different tunes. He's got the tambourine player that would play some Provençal tunes. And then you've got the duck. The duck was quite something. It could flap its wings and so on. Very, very impressive. And the Turk. Who knows about the Turk? Turk? So the Turk was a big hoax. So in that box there, like we're at the circus show now, right? big box, there's a guy who hides in there. And lots of cogs and so on that moves around. When you open the door, you see the cogs, and the guy would go on the other side. And when you open it, he goes to the other side. 6 different people over time, over 85 years, that were hiding in there. Of course, one at a time, right? And the chess player here was really, really good. They could beat Bonaparte, and Ben Franklin got beaten up by those that hoax, the Turk. It looks like a Turk. And from the bottom, it would know which piece is, this is chess, right? Which piece, and then he would move the stuff around. And fool people for 85 years, right? This Turk. And so this Turk traveled quite a bit, went to Vienna, Paris, London, Leipzig, Dresden, St. Petersburg, New York, here, Boston, Baltimore, Philly. And this is an interesting chapter as well, because it's complete hoax and people were taken in, right? Taken for a ride. So it was very, very impressive. And then finally, looks like that's a recurrent theme. It got destroyed by a fire, and we don't have anything in the museum of the Turk. And then if we go to Switzerland, we have this gentleman by Pierre-Jacques Droz, and that's continuing in the, I would say, the culture, the trend to build those automata, right? Those things. And so his most famous work was the writer, the draftsman. Let me show you a picture. The musician. The girl plays, it made up of 2,500 different parts. 2,500, right? And then you have the draftsman, can draw images, portrait of Louis XV, and could write mon tutu. Tutu means dog in French, right? Tutu. And the writer, this one has 6,000 parts, and it could write messages, 40 characters, using quill and ink. So that's a super impressive thing, right? It could write a custom message, and they were there to them. Of course, a Swiss watchmaker, right? That's where he comes from, to be able to do that kind of stuff. And today they're on display at the Musée d'Art et d'Histoire in Neuchâtel, in Switzerland. So we'll go to, if you ask yourself, where does the word robot come from? What's the genesis, the etymology of the word robot? Actually, it comes from the play by this gentleman by the name of Karel Capek, right? Czech gentleman came up with the word robot. Robota in Slavic language means, it's kind of a peasant, like serf. Actually, he said, it's thanks to his brother that he came up with that term. He wanted the word labori, right, the labor. And so he wrote a play. It's called Oh You Are from Capel. And this whole story about to eliminate human labor and replace them by robot. And at the end, there's a glimpse of hope because there are 2 of those robots kind of meet each other, and then they fall in love and start talking and kind of remind you of Adam and Eve kind of stuff, right? Wink, wink. Now let's jump to the 20th century, and of course I cannot do justice to 20th century of one slide, but I'll just mention a few things. So first one is the Unimate. The Unimate was the first programmable industrial robot. It could do repetitive jobs and then adopted by GM, General Motors. There's the Stanford arm, and that was interesting because it got 6 degrees of freedom. And then the commercialization, there's a robot called the Puma. And I know the Puma because I wrote programs for the Puma back in the days when I was a young man doing my PhD. And then we have this Shaky from Stanford Research Institute, which is kind of interesting in the sense that it could plan. So it could walk around, avoid obstacles, and it's got a vision system, right? So very reminiscent of what we're trying to do today, right, at very, very early days. And then we have, of course, the Viking landers to Mars, right? Those are robots that could send the data in real time, right? And then we have, who has a Roomba? A Roomba in the, do the cleanup stuff, right? Okay, I know that doesn't do justice to this century, I apologize. So when we talk of robot, there are typically different types of robots, and let's say there's 7 big types, right? We have the industrial robots that everyone's familiar with. The military and security, there was a gentleman that was very interested in the drones and the robot to go and kill people here. So we have the service robots, the medical and surgical. You've probably heard of the Da Vinci, right? The gamma knife and all that stuff. Exploration robot, that would be the Viking landers, and the swarm and specialized ones. And I think this is really, really powerful, right? When you can have drones that talk with each other, can look what's going on, and tell the robot where to go. This is really, really formidable, right? The amount of damage you can cause is just crazy. And then on the other side, we have the humanoid robots. So when we talk robots, we're going to focus on the humanoid robots, okay? So I have a few robots for you. This is 2025. Atlas and its buddy, the little dog, right? Spot from Boston Dynamics, a very, very famous, very well-known robotics company. Figure 2 from Figure AI. Optimus from Tesla, yeah. And then we have some robots from China, right? We got G1 from Unitree, SEO1 and Star1. Star1 is interesting, it can hold chopsticks, right? Which is interesting, right? So the kind of the dexterity of the hand to be able to do that. The other ones can do kickboxing and so on, and I'll show you a couple of slides there. So I know it's a very short list. Here's a longer list of humanoid robots, and the list is way, way longer than that. So I'll just stop at 20, and then if you want, it's just more. But just know there are lots of robots. You probably give me a name I won't recognize. Okay, so what happened 6 weeks ago? 6 weeks ago, we had the first World Humanoid Robot Games, right? Like the Olympic Games for the robot, right? And what the heck is that? Okay, it happened in Beijing, 2 places, the Bird's Nest, right? And the Ice Ribbon in Beijing. Soccer, kickboxing, table tennis, martial arts. The martial arts would be more like Kung Fu as opposed to, you know, kickboxing.
They have track also, where they were racing?
Yeah, I'll show you a picture. So the question you have right away, this should be happening in the US, right? No, okay. So does that mean the center of gravity of robotics is already shifting to China? Open question, no answer required. So here are some pictures from what happened 6 weeks ago. You can see kickboxing here, right? The robots you can see, this is called, it's like 5 robots instead of the whole gang of 11 on each side, right? Playing robot. And very funny and laughable. You can see the picture right here. The robot fell on the ground and people with stretchers would grab the robot and move the robot as if it's human beings. And then what you're talking about, the robots are running. 500 humanoid robots participated 6 weeks ago. 500, 500, okay? 26 events, 3 categories, 16 countries, including, of course, China and the US. But then there are other countries as well, like Japan that you would expect, right? Germany, Brazil, Netherlands. And 192 academic teams. And very strong performance from Unitree and UB Tech, those are in martial arts. And next year, there would be a bigger one in 2026 in China, right? So they have track and field and all that good stuff assessed. So I'll skip this part. So next time I'll talk to you about the Turing Machine and some cool stuff. Okay, so we'll go to history of tomorrow. You're good on the section on the history of robots? Okay, cool. So what's happening today, right? So this is the history, what's the history of tomorrow, right, today. So what's happening here? I think the 4 things, there are many, many, many things happening, but the 4 things I want to call your attention to. Number 1, we look at the trends, and I'll talk about kind of an inflection point that's becoming very popular about 2 weeks ago, since the launch of ChatGPT 5, by the way. And then let's call it the fork in the road, right? So what's happening now is investment in mega AI data centers, huge, huge amount. So fueled by the conviction that we need to get to AGI, artificial general intelligence, meaning that this thing would be as smart as any human being here for any domain. So this is really our holy grail. People are rushing there. And if you reach AGI first, you'll own the world, so to speak. So then the investment is we don't count anymore, right? So you go crazy, because if you get there, then you're fine. You'll be able to pay back anything you want. So just to give you a sense, so Microsoft and OpenAI, they have this Stargate project, and you heard about it, like $500 billion, right? Investment in the data centers. And we have the Amazon Project Rainier, $100 billion. We have Google, $75 billion. We have Meta, 65. And there's a list of smaller ones, so they're too small for us to talk about, right? And then for China, we don't have very good information, but the best guess is around $100 billion of investment from the Chinese government, private tech, and special bonds. It's probably much, much higher than that, right? So this should give you a sense of the amount of money that's going in the data centers. The second one is the endless innovations to extend the large language model, like ChatGPT, right? So what the heck are we doing there? There are things such as a lot of work is going in the customization of the LLM, right? So you are a company, and so you're a pharmaceutical company, and you want the LLM to be trained on your products, on the clinical trials you're running, and things that's relevant to your business. So a lot of energy is going towards customization of the LLM. Other one is something called distillation that was made very popular by DeepSeek. You probably heard of the Chinese DeepSeek. And the idea is, interestingly, it's an American idea, but really implemented by the Chinese. So the idea is, instead of having the large language model replicate one, we have a student, and you guys are the teachers. So instead of training the system, I have the question, and I ask you, your ChatGPT, what do you think? Your Copilot, what do you think? Your Perplexity, what do you think? Your Gemini, what do you think? Your Grok, what do you think? And I combine this thing, and this is how I learn. And the claim is it costs only 3% of the cost of building the whole gigantic LLM. And interestingly, it's an American idea, and the Chinese, but the Chinese did a very good job. Things such as diffusion, like you put like some cream in your tea, and you see the stuff kind of diffuse, right? But here the idea is to do that with images. We take images, we put noise in them, and then we denoise them. It sounds counterintuitive, but it works extremely well. And this is how all that stuff's working when you have a prompt to generate images. One thing that's happening is the chain of thought. So meaning having a task, what you need to do is to break the task in smaller tasks, right? Divide and conquer, and then have the system solve it, and then explain the chain of thought to train of thought. I think I'd point out one more thing before I move on, is that a lot of the energy that we've been spending is on the training part. So you train the LLM, and by the way, if OpenAI did not have to pay for the training, they would be making money today. It's a training that sucks up a lot of money, right? So what happened now, we're running kind of out of new data. So instead of putting more money in training the system to generate the answer, which we call inference, by the way, that's a term we use, inference. So now a lot of the computation happens in the inference. So meaning that you ask your question, you get 1,000 answers, and then you get another task, which is to pick out the best answer to your question. So you can see that makes the compute time go up again, but not on the training, but in the inference. Yeah, okay. And then I'll skip the other ones. So the big one you would recognize, ChatGPT, Claude, Grok, Gemini, Llama. The other ones, maybe through the news, if you recognize Gwen, DeepSeek, Henry, Bytron, and so on. Agentic AI. What the heck is agentic AI? So, you have ChatGPT, you interact with it. Let's say talk is cheap. Let's do some real work. Real work in the electronic world. So what does that mean? It's go to the website, book a room for me, right? Click, 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 put the info that needs to be put in there, do some work instead of just talking. That's agentic AI, okay? So this is what's scaring the whole industry now, because the white-collar jobs, if we can do real agent, probably we don't need you too much anymore. And so you have, those are the ones that are the most prominent one. And they're getting better, right, in terms of doing work. Doing work as in, it's not robot yet, so that's still in the electronic world. But what's interesting is the system gets out of the computer and goes and do searches and so on. So you're taking the computer, you're taking the program out of the computer, and it's doing what you do. It clicks, and there's some demos, maybe I should show you some demos that we have where this thing takes over. You say take over, and we'd go and click, click, put the name and put the info, fill out the forms and all that stuff, things that you would do, but it would do it, right? So you can see the excitement and the fear of that technology. Last thing, and then I'll move on, it's called vibe coding. So what's vibe coding? Vibe coding is to code without coding, without writing a line of code, right? So when you code, you spend lots of time to debug. This thing would debug as well, right? So that's the whole promise. Vibe coding is a term that coined by Karpathy, the famous guy. And I've done that too, and we have apps, so I'm not going to talk too much about the apps, but you would go open the computer and say, write me a program that can play Pong or Pac-Man. And you wait, you can see the code being generated in front of you. And it keeps on like 1 minute, 2 minutes, and then you have the button called play. You click on play, and it plays. Yes? Okay. So the promise is, so we've been playing quite a bit with this thing, with this vibe coding. So you heard that Meta, Zuckerberg was saying that he won't hire any people, middle-level programmer. They're not going to do that at all. That's coming from this vibe coding. The vibe coding is very attractive in terms of promise. But we've been playing with that, and what we found out, and basically when I listen to podcasts and read stuff, articles, they're basically saying what we observe, which is if the task is self-contained and relatively small, then it works. But if you want to do something big, this is not working so well. And there's some studies that show actually by using vibe coding for huge large-scale application, the productivity goes down. Because it generates things with errors, and you spend your time spinning your wheels to fix the bugs that were generated, not yours, right, by the program. And turns out that actually it's less efficacious. Now, this is a question of today. So what is it going to be by Christmas? Will things be different? Absolutely. How much different? Anyone's guess. But definitely that's the right direction in terms of, you know, the main impediment is the programming part. And what would stop AI from becoming better AI if AI can program itself and change it, right? That would be the idea. Okay, so the inflection point I was talking about, so ChatGPT came out, and it's half full, half empty, right? So people were disappointed because Sam Altman was coming up and saying, oh, look at all this cool stuff it's going to do. And then you look at, yeah, it's good, but not that big jump that everyone was expecting. So there was kind of like the stock market, right? So you're expecting something big and it gets out and people go, oh, gosh. So have we really hit the limit here? Or it's only ChatGPT, right? So let me give you some numbers here. So a flop, floating point operation per second, the flops. And it's basically, if you look at your laptop, whatever laptop you have, it would do something like 10 to the power of 10. 10 to the power of 10 means you write a number, you put 10 zeros after it, right? So if you 10 gigas, right? Flops. 10 to the power of 10, 10, 11, that would be your laptop. ChatGPT 3 was 3.14, 10 to the power of 23, right? So after your 10, you add on the 12 zeros after that. Add 12 zeros after that, yeah? 4, it's 2 orders of magnitude higher, 10 to the power of 25. And the ChatGPT 5 about 3 times bigger than ChatGPT 4. This is huge monsters, right? And so you can see here, people say, oh my God, with all that computing power, we didn't do some super breakthrough, but it was incremental. So, maybe, let me think, right? So now let's talk a little bit about the fork in the road. How much time do I have, by the way? I have no idea. 20 minutes? Okay, good. So on the one hand, we have Maya is thriving as technology enhances her humanity. She can do what she wants. And on the other guy, Jared wishes he was born before that AI business, right? Because now he's very, very miserable. So you get utopia on the left and dystopia on the right. So there's this gentleman, Mark Segmore, I think got an interesting quote here, and he says, AI will be either the best thing ever to happen to humanity or the worst, right? We have to make sure we get it right. And just for fun, I put right is dystopia. Okay, but bad sense of humor. Okay. So on the left is what we want. Is it possible that what we get is on the right? Okay. So we have about 15 minutes. I'd like to share some thoughts with you, and then I'll take some questions. So the first thing is, can AI be truly creative? I mean, this thing, can it really come up with stuff that, like a Bach invention, concerto, or drawing, or some math stuff, right? Is it really creative? Another question I want to broach is, are we meant to work? Do we have to work? Yeah, we do? Okay. Some other people think no. And then, what the heck is consciousness, and why should we bother about consciousness? Okay, so we'll go take some altitude here, if that's okay with you. Okay, number one. Can AI be truly creative? Okay. What does the conventional wisdom say? Okay, AI may come across as creative, but in reality, no. What it's doing, it's putting pieces together, it's kind of mix and match and creating stuff, and it tells you it is creative. It is incapable of true, genuine, creative task, right? Is that so? Is that so? Is that really true, the conventional wisdom? I have 3 pieces of info to give you that would support the idea that maybe it is capable of creativity. Number one, there was, AlphaGo, he's a world champion, is no longer a human being, right? You heard of AlphaGo beating Lee Sedol and all that stuff. There's that very now famed move 37. The move 37 in game number 2 is what AlphaGo played, right? And that the stuff right in the Sego here. So move 37 was deemed by all the experts in the room as being a stupid move. The guy who was playing Lee Sedol took 15 minutes before responding. 15 minutes, just a little less than 15 minutes, but 15 minutes to respond. He was so taken aback by this move, kind of out of the blue, and he was really at a loss. Definitely not a stupid move, because he would have responded right away, okay? And so this move 37 is considered now to be the landmark moment of the history of Go, right? I mean, you talk about anyone in Go, say, move 37, they would know what you're talking about. So if this thing is not creative, how come it can come up with this thing? Okay, you're not sold on that. Let me give you another one. So they have evolution, DNA, changes things, mutation, crossover, and all that stuff that you know about. Well, what if we apply it to a computer program? We take the program, we ask it, give it a task, and then we change the program. Actually, we ask the program to change itself, to get the code and change a few things in there, and then run it again and again. And then, like evolution, then we'll get from the it's like the equivalent of the DNA, it would progress, and then it come up with something interesting, right? So there's that famous 4x4 matrix multiplication, right? If you forgot matrix multiplication, you take A11 multiplied by B11 plus A12 times B21, right? And so on. So you can see when you compute the first one, it's 4 times 4, right? So 16, 4 times 4. So you get 4 operations, and then you got 4. So you get 16, and you do that 4 times, right? So you get 64. Common sense tells you you need 64 operations. But if you are Mr. Strasser and you're extremely smart, you say, actually, you need only 49, not 64. And this guy is very respected, theorem from Mr. Strassen, you need 64 operations. And that was given to the AI system. And the AI system said, actually, we could do it in 48. Not 49, 48, right? While it doesn't sound like a big deal, what's the heck between 49 and 48? It's a large number bigger than 45 anyways. But the significance of it is huge, right? Because this is one of the most respected math guy that came up with 49, and the thing says 48 works, right? Okay. The third one I'll tell you is a conjecture. So what a conjecture means, I know you know, but I'll remind everyone. A conjecture is a claim that looks like it is true, but maybe not, but we haven't proven it yet, right? So it goes in that space, which is kind of the purgatory, not in hell or heaven. It's in between there, right? So we are not very sure about its status. And if you look at the Pythagorean theorem that you learn as a kid, a squared plus b squared plus c squared, so those are the Pythagorean triples would be like 3 squared plus 4 squared equal to 5 squared, right? 9 plus 16 is 25. And this guy by the name of Pharma said, okay, what if we generalize this instead of the power of 2, let's throw in power n there, right? Are there triples that would satisfy that business, right? Any number like to the power 4, right? Find a triple. And everyone, like they were looking, they couldn't find any of those triples. But it was super hard to prove. And that's the story that Pharma was saying, I have the proof, but the margin is too small, right? That's kind of in math folklore. And so this thing happened in 1993. Andrew Wiles, professor at Oxford, actually proved this thing. Took him 7 or 8 years of his life. And in the first version, there was a bug, and his brightest student helped him fix the bug. And then it was published in 1995, right? So that's a conjecture. A conjecture is a claim about something that hasn't had a proof yet. So now this thing, the Fermat's theorem, is no longer a conjecture. It's been proven. Why do I bother you with that? There's this guy called Ramanujan, right? That Indian legendary person. And the movie is called The Man Who Knew Infinity. Who watched this movie? No, no one? Okay. Yes? And it's a story of a guy, an Indian guy, like a nobody. And then he wants to connect with Hardy, who was a professor at Cambridge. And he sent his manuscript, and Hardy was looking at the fruit in the trash. And then he says, it looks a little weird, right? You grab it back and says, oh, this is known, this unknown, never heard. But he was really mesmerized by the stuff that Ramanujan came up with. So he invited Ramanujan to Cambridge. And that's, if you watch the movie is pretty cool. And so this guy was big into those numbers. We call them continued fraction. I have one up there for you. 4 over 3 pi minus 8, and you can write it whatever way you want, and this is one way you could do that. So there's some guy in Israel. What they did was to create a Ramanujan machine. So this thing, what it does, it spits out conjectures. It doesn't spit out the proof. It's only conjectures. And some of people say, okay, the conjecture it comes up is not of the caliber of Ramanujan. Kind of hard to be of the caliber of Ramanujan. But they came up with a bunch of them, like 100, and 38 were proven true. So this thing is not kind of throwing a few things here and there. It's proven true. And then of those 38, 31 actually can be generalized. It means that it has potential for other line of research, right? So if this Ramanujan machine is BS, well, how do you explain this thing, right? And it would come up with conjectures. So when people say, oh, the only thing it can do is to mix and match, and well, check out the literature a little bit, and maybe you have a different idea. Okay, thank you. We're good? Second part, are we meant to work? Do we have to work? Well, there's an interesting guy by the name of Huizinga, last century, and he came up with that notion of homo ludens. So you have homo sapiens, homo faber, homo loquens, and here, the man built to play, right? This is what it is, homo ludens. And you can check out his stuff. He's a pretty cool guy. And so not homo faber, not loquens, but homo ludens, meant to play, okay? So if you look at the history of our civilization, and you look at cave drawings, you look at the Olympic Games, and they would stop, the faction, the city-state that were fighting would stop like a truce so they can play, and after playing, we fight again, right? After that, we take a pause because we need to, playing is so important, we need to take a break, okay? The tournaments and carnivals and chess, and we spend so much time on this, just play, right? Protein design puzzle, we turn it to what we call gamification, right? And then Minecraft and other games. So what's kind of interesting with play, it is purely voluntary, and we have this thing called the magic circle, meaning that within the circle we have rules that we invent, and you abide by these rules. And then outside, then normal life. And if you cheat, you can always cheat, it's less fun, right? But everyone agrees on these rules, right? And you have kind of interesting rivalry and fellowship, and then cultural residue means once you get out of it, things, life as we know it, still is there, right, before the game. So the question for you is the humanoid robot the holy grail we have been waiting for to express the homo ludens in us? It's economic output or GDP growth, right? The wrong metric for what we are built for. I think it's a deep question, right? We always talk about, GDP growth and stuff, labor market, interest rate, Jerome Powell would come up and interest rate go down, and all that stuff, right? So we're so used to this. And the question is to step out and say, are we really meant to do that, right? Question. And then comes the question of universal income. If you're having fun playing, who's doing the work? Oh, the robot, but then how do you make money, right? So where's the money coming from, right? So universal income, the very interesting proposals around the robot tax and all that stuff. Who's going to own the robot? It's like you have to rent the robot, like a rental car, or you own a robot, or you have many robots, and many of you would like to have a robot. What the heck's going to happen there? Okay. And you're good? Okay, third one, and then I'll shut up. What about consciousness, right? So consciousness, I think we don't care about consciousness, right? Why do we care about consciousness? It's useless. So consciousness is, a little wispy kind of notion. We don't really know what the heck this thing is. But we know it is the ability that human beings have to be aware of ourselves, right? Our emotions, our thoughts, and our actions. It gives us a sense of identity and presence in the world. And we are able to reflect on our decisions and makes us responsible for action, not this consciousness. That internal voice that says what you should do, what you should not do, right? And then all that business about empathy, right? Helping people in need, and all that, this kind of has to do with our consciousness, right? Identity, introspection, ethics, empathy. And so I want to say consciousness is completely irrelevant in terms of AI and the robot, completely irrelevant. Why? Because a very good actor may lead us to believe that it has consciousness when it does not, right? So I don't really care if you're conscious or not, to the extent that you behave like someone who has consciousness, then it's the same thing for me. Here's an idea. So what if the robot is not performing? The robot is by itself, far from the madding crowd, and doing its own thing. And you catch the robot crying, watching TV. Oh my God, why did he have to leave his sweetheart without saying goodbye? And the robot's crying, okay? Or you see a robot pick up a rose and say, oh my God, what is it? This red rose breathes a love that stirs my soul, right? And it's not acting for you. It's doing it on its own volition, right, by itself, okay? So now I think we're almost convinced that they are conscious, right? I mean, it's not to try to impress it. That's the way it works, right? It is possible that it's still trying to fake the whole thing, but I think we have moved a little beyond that point, okay? So what happens as soon as we believe that the robot is conscious becomes the question, right? We have no choice but to treat the robot with dignity, right? Because it exhibits conscious behavior, journey to fake, as conscious sentient being, we have to treat it like a human being. I think it's hard not to, right? So instead of having human being in the center and then you have the robot, like the assistants there, so we'll be on the same footing, so to speak. Right? I believe a robot is conscious, we have equality. And just to finish, a quick note on the mirror neurons. If you're not familiar with mirror neurons, this kind of discovery we did like in 1995, something like this. 1992, it came out. In 1996, it became very popular, is by observing the macaques, right? So you can see the macaque seeing the other one eating something and getting excited as if the experience of the other actually happened to them. And we know now, we are all of us here, that's the reason we have empathy. Because when you see something, it plays in our head exactly as if it were us. So with that, I'll shut up and I'll take your questions.